As the comic book industry collapse spells doom and gloom for comic book stores, I can tell you there's one glimmer of hope. It's the Hippy Record Store business model. Welcome to Wonder World Comics. I'm Dennis Barger, 45-year collector of everything, 35-year seller of all collectibles, and 20-year comic book store retailer. In 2015, I was headed to San Diego as a comic book retailer. On the plane, I got to watch a movie called All Things Must Pass, the history of the rise and fall of Tower Records. I was blown away. I had no idea half of that stuff had even happened in that industry, let alone what was about to happen to our industry. When I landed, I went through all the retailer events that they had lined up for us, and all I could think was, there is nothing that could save us from an impending doom, like in the Tower Record story. It occurred to me that there was one person who kind of survived that entire record store business model from the growth to the crash, and that was the Hippy Record Store. What is the Hippy Record Store? The Hippy Record Store it didn't have anything to do with hippies, but in the 50s and 60s, there was always little independent music that wasn't carried by the five and dimes downtown or by the big boxes that showed up later. That's where you'd get the weird Andy Warhol stuff, the Frank Zappa stuff. This was the stuff that wasn't carried by the mom and pop shops of downtown. And definitely when the big box stores get involved, they definitely wouldn't carry that stuff. So they existed outside the bubble. All of a sudden, bigger boxes show up. And while those bigger boxes took more and more money out of the record store as five and dimes ceased to exist, as they were unable to sell at the higher price points and the big box guys were undercutting them, the Hippy Record Store had to evolve. It had to pivot. What did it pivot to? Well, in the 60s, they sold underground comics. They also sold these little pipes that you could smoke tobacco out of. They sold all the stuff to turn your bedroom into Greg Brady's pimped out attic apartment. They also became the place where you sold your used stuff. They were the first people to recycle the vinyl records, later cassettes, even CDs. When the big box guys wouldn't buy that stuff back, the Hippy Record Store would trade in it. So you all of a sudden had this one place outside of town. So when the crash happened after Napster came onto the scene, all of a sudden there was one guy who was still selling physical media, but he was also selling everything else. We had a place in Detroit called The Station. They evolved into selling stripper boots and lingerie. That's how they survived, and they're still around. In the 2000s, there was a wasteland. There was no music anywhere except for what was purchasable at the corporate big box stores. All of a sudden, Amazon takes over. Amazon starts selling music, new music, but it was only the stuff that Amazon approved. During this wasteland, there was one person who showed up to save the Hippy Record Store, and they didn't even know it existed. That person was Jack White. He told all of his fans, hey guys, if you like my music, I want you to listen to it on vinyl. You need to go find a record store. And they did. Those little hippie record stores all over the country started getting new vinyl. Then in 2008, Record Store Day was invented. That was a place for everybody to hub to get exclusive records created by the record labels, the ones that are left, to have a special event once a year to just celebrate vinyl records. And then in 2023, out of nowhere, vinyl outsells CDs for the first time ever. What do I carry that makes me the Hippy Record Store? Well, the bongs are the Funko Pops. Necessity, but I don't necessarily like them. Beanie Babies, blast from the past. People remember collecting them. As long as you keep them cheap, I buy them for $0.25, I sell them for $5, 3 for $10. Then you got vintage action figures from the 90s. Toy Biz, Marvel, starting lineups, you name it, we have it. If it makes you stroll down memory lane, I'm gonna carry it. I'm gonna buy it for $1, I'm gonna sell it for $5. Then you have Pokemon. If anything, Pokemon is the bellwether product for over 25 years. Since the Pokemon movie came out in 2000, every kid for the last 3 generations has collected Pokemon cards. We do such a great business in Pokemon that we have one person dedicated to just pricing Pokemon all day long. So if you combine our last video on the necessity to turn into something different, and you take this video and you understand the trajectory of an existing business model that almost follows exactly what I've been talking about, and you find the product mixes that the nostalgia craze is about to discover and put these in your store, you're gonna find a stream of revenue that'll survive you through any crash. Thank you for watching. Make sure you watch our newest video, which will be coming out every week. And on top of that, check out me and my partners, Jesse James and Brian MacLeod, on Beyond Wednesday channels, The Industry of Comics. Thanks for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe. We'll be bringing you more content just like this. Bye.